Hey, what's up? This is Tony. Also, I just saw the last night's fight with Richard Hitchinson, and he's supposed to be ranked number one for Subriel Matias's IBF world title. And we're talking about the 140-pound weight class division. It's the most competitive division right now. Right now that's the hottest division. I don't care what anybody says. And I feel like when it comes to boxing, the fighters that the fights that people want to see the most is a lot of people that sell right away is the Puerto Rico versus Mexico rivalry. That rivalry is second to none. There's no comparison as far as consumers, like actually fans supporting fights based on that narrative of Puerto Rico versus Mexico, because that rivalry has existed since the 50s, 60s, early 50s. It existed a long time ago. So it started with the heavyweight division. It started with that division, and I feel like right now the biggest fight to make, as far as besides Devin Haney, Teofimo Lopez, who are the fighters that most people consider as far as like the majority of the mainstream, they consider them like the guys that people know about, the guys that you need to fight. Like Ryan Garcia, he's never won a championship, and for some reason he gets the first slot to get the fights with Devin Haney, Tank Davis. It's because of his popularity, and it's all about marketing. And they've been able to market Ryan Garcia as a hot ticket. And even though he hasn't won a championship, he sells a lot because he has a lot of fans based on social media, not on what he's accomplished in boxing. It has nothing to do with boxing. It has to do with popularity. And that's what boxing is right now, a business. So I feel like the biggest fight to make, in spite of what mainstream narrative promotes, Shakur Stevenson, they promote Devin Haney, Tank Davis, Teofimo Lopez. But the fighters like that not as many people know about, like Subriel Matias and and Pitbull Cruz, even though they don't have a following as big as maybe Tank Davis, because Tank Davis had to fight Ryan Garcia to get popular like that, and that's the reason why. It's popularity. And I feel like the Mexico Puerto Rico rivalry is the biggest rivalry, and it can make them more popular than Ryan Garcia, not Ryan Garcia, than Devin Haney, Tank Davis, and Shakur Stevenson, because of the rivalry. The rivalry between Mexico and Puerto Rico is so huge that it would surpass the amount of consumers that would support the fight, based on the fact that Latinos are the biggest consumers in pay-per-view buys, pay-per-view sales, as far as boxing is concerned. And I feel like that would overshadow and surpass any fight that you can make with Devin Haney, Tank Davis, because let's look at the facts historically. The fighters that sell the most are the Latino fighters, because the consumers and the fans are more loyal when it comes to like spending money, buying pay-per-views. They support their fighters more than an African American fighter. I'm not taking anything away from the African American fighters, because they have talent. But most of the time, when an African American fighter needs to be a household name, he has to fight a Latino fighter that's already established. Perfect example: Oscar De La Hoya. Before Floyd Mayweather fought Oscar De La Hoya, Floyd Mayweather wasn't getting the notoriety or the recognition. He wasn't a full-blown household name until he fought Oscar De La Hoya. He had to fight Oscar De La Hoya because Oscar De La Hoya had the strong fan base and support of the Latino consumer. And if you look at the Puerto Rican consumer, Felix Trinidad, Miguel Cotto, they sell right away because most Latino fan base of boxing is very loyal, and they always support at the gate, and they support in pay-per-view, and they're more loyal when it comes to supporting their boxers, because they have a number one, it's a big tradition in Puerto Rico and Mexico and Latin countries, that especially those countries, to support boxing. Boxing is the number one sport in those countries. So when it comes to boxing in the United States, it's not promoted at the same level as a Latino country, because it's not the number one sport in the United States. The United States, that's not the number one sport. So that's the reason why. That's one of the reasons why the Latino consumer always does better than the African American consumer when it comes to boxing, because the African American boxers don't have the same loyalty and consumers that actually come and support their fighters and willing to pay-per-view as much as Latinos. It's very low in comparison to the Latinos, Puerto Rico, Mexico. When they support their fighters, they actually pay the dollar. They actually support the boxer. They actually pay the pay-per-view. They actually support it because it's the number one sport in those countries. And in the United States, the Latinos actually support the Latinos from Puerto Rico and Mexico when they fight, because it's something that the consumer is usually the Latinos. They're very loyal, and it's part of our culture and tradition. Like, we grew up boxing as the number one sport. So it always overshadows any fight of an African American being supported, because they don't get that support in the same way, because it's not the number one sport in the United States. And now boxing has become more of an old school generation type sport, and everybody's getting into mixed martial arts, and that's competing with boxing. But boxing hasn't been promoted the way it should, because a lot of times the promoters are always like trying to keep their fighter undefeated. They don't want to put their fighter with the one that from a different company, promotional company, and we don't get fights as consistently as we used to get them. Like back in the 90s, we used to have fighters fight 4 times a year, and the best would fight the best. It would maybe take maybe a year to make the biggest fights, like Oscar De La Hoya, Felix Trinidad, Whitaker, Chavez. Those kind of fights took maybe 2 years, 3 years to make. But now, in this time and era, it takes so many years. Like perfect example, Mayweather versus Pacquiao. That took so many years to actually make, and they were already not at their best. Pacquiao wasn't at his best, and at his Mayweather may have been at his best, but the fight was already too old and too late to make. It would have been better if they made the fight earlier, like maybe 2 years earlier. It would have been better. So I just feel like the best 140-pound championship unification fight between Subriel Matias and Isaac Cruz is the biggest fight to make, as far as the fan-friendly fight that people want to see. But I feel like with that fight alone, Subriel Matias, if he beats Isaac Pitbull Cruz, he will surpass Devin Haney, Teofimo, or Tank Davis. He has a possibility to surpass them as a fighter that people want to see and bring more viewers to the table, because based on the fan base alone of Mexico and Puerto Rico, if they fight together and either one wins the fight and becomes a unified champion, they can make more money than Devin Haney, Tank Davis, and Teofimo Lopez, because they cater to the Latino, the Latino fan base, and it's a bigger fan base than African American, because it's not a number one sport in the United States. And I think Teofimo Lopez, he's Latino. He could sell too, but he doesn't. His country, Honduras, doesn't have a long track record of having champions like Puerto Rico, Mexico. So, but it still will sell if a Puerto Rican or a Mexican fights Teofimo Lopez, because Teofimo Lopez is still Latino, but he's known in the American market, but he doesn't make as much money as the other fighters, I think, like Devin Haney, Tank Davis. But Devin Haney is not really a household name like the way everybody's perceiving. He needs to fight a Ryan Garcia, a Latino that a lot of people follow, and De La Hoya has done a great job promoting him, but I don't think that Devin Haney loses to Ryan Garcia. I think Ryan Garcia doesn't have the skills to beat a Devin Haney. Devin Haney is a superior athlete. He has great defense. It's not a Mayweather defense. He has some deficiencies in his armor. Like he doesn't have a chin. He could get hurt. He got hurt in the Hernandez fight. And okay, maybe he's stronger at the 140, but I don't think that that Devin Haney is as good as a Mayweather. He has the best defense in the whole division, and on paper, he's the best 140-pound fighter. But the fighter that he beat, Regis Prograis, is flat-footed and slow, and doesn't throw as many combinations as Subriel Matias. And he wasn't the best Regis Prograis that beat Josh Taylor. That should have won against Josh Taylor. It was a close fight. He's not at that. He wasn't at that level anymore. He was already old already when he fought. He's like 35 years old. That he's going out. Like all his abilities and the way he used to fight when he was younger, it was not the way he fought when he fought Devin Haney. I'm not saying that Devin Haney would have not beaten him when he was in his prime, but I just feel like he beat a shop-worn Regis Prograis, Devin Haney. I think the victory was the easiest fight for him to make. But if he fights a Subriel Matias, he's fighting somebody that's fresh, that still has a lot of ability. He's not old. He's in prime, and he fights a lot better than Regis Prograis. Throws more combinations, has a high guard defense. He's actually fast, and he has better legs than Regis Prograis. So I think the Regis Prograis versus Subriel Matias fight, I think Subriel Matias has a lot of chances to beat him because there's some chinks in his armor, as far as Devin Haney with the chin. And he does get hit. He's not like the most, he is the most defensive fighter, but he is not as highly skilled as a Mayweather. And I feel like, a fight between Subriel Matias and him, I think Subriel Matias can beat him. I think he has a chance to beat him. I'm not going to say that I'm 100% sure about that, but I feel like it's more like a 60-40 as far as a victory. Subriel Matias has a 60% chance to win. And there's this boxing content creator. His name is Dante's Boxing. He tries to undermine the Puerto Rico versus Mexico rivalry, how big it is. He tries to undermine the true perception that everybody knows that Puerto Rico versus Mexico rivalry in Puerto Rico is the biggest rivalry in boxing. He tries to undermine that by saying that that's not true, that the biggest boxing rivalry in boxing is the African American versus the Mexican. That's not true. The fights that sell more are the fights where the fighters go toe to toe and they have a war and they both have they give the fans a fan-friendly fight by, like everybody wants to see a knockout. Everybody wants to see people in a war fighting in a fight where like both fighters are come there to fight and they don't come there to box, because like even though boxing is a game of hitting and not getting hit, that kind of style for the masses is boring. Like most people in boxing that dominate are the Latinos, Mexican and Puerto Ricans, and even casual fans. They don't want to see a boxer box for 12 rounds. They want to see a knockout. I respect the game of boxing, the sweet science, but at the same time, most boxing consumers do not want to see a boxer fight for 12 boring rounds, be it in a technical fight. I respect the game, the hit and not get hit. But I prefer, like most boxing consumers would prefer, even casual boxing consumers, they prefer a fight where they think somebody's going to get knocked out. They don't want to see a fighter be technical for 12 rounds, and unless he's exciting, where he's technical, but he's also a puncher, where it's there's a high possibility it's going to be ending by a knockout. People want to see the heavyweight division because they want to see the big guys, because they know that the big guys, they come there and they're more dangerous, and it's more likely that there'll be a knockout. But if you fight a fighter that's just totally technical, and the other guy's totally technical, it becomes a boring fight, and a lot of people don't want to see a boring fight. People want to see, the majority of the people want to see a fight where the fight can end by knockout. They don't want to see a fighter, use his boxing skills, and like the majority of people, not the boxing purists, they don't mind seeing that. I don't mind seeing that as long as you're not just running. You're boxing and you're setting up the fighter and you're landing punches. But if you don't have a knockout, a lot of times, I'm like, okay, I just saw a fight, the boxer give him a clinic and just dominated the puncher. But in boxing, it's all about strategy. And 9 times out of 10, the the boxer, the one that has the best defense, usually wins if he masters all the attributes of a boxer, of making you miss, timing you, athletic footwork, the jab, timing you and countering you. If he masters all those things and he has heart and he has a chin, he usually beats a fighter that's a puncher. But there's this flip side to that. When a boxer is a puncher and he knows how to use his legs, he's quick and he throws a lot of combinations and he has enough speed and power and he has a good chin and to time a boxer, he has a chance to win too. So it's all about what each boxer masters. Like each style is mastered one more than the other, then the fighter that masters the slugging style could win depending on different variables. They can actually beat a boxer. But usually when you combine the two, if the boxer that makes you miss and is more athletic, if he masters that style very good, he can beat a slugger that hasn't mastered all his attributes. You know what I mean? Like it's all about different attributes that you have, like different intangibles. Like if a boxer that has power, has speed, power, height, um, athletic ability with boxing enough where he's mastered all those attributes, he can beat a boxer that's mastered those attributes. But it's usually harder when you have both of them on the same level. It becomes more of a 50-50 fight, but usually the boxer that masters everything and usually wins the fight because a lot of times the sluggers don't master all the other attributes they need to master, like the speed, the footwork, timing, and being able to cut the ring. Those are different factors, and there's only a few special fighters that can actually master, that are punchers, that are sluggers, that can actually master a lot of those attributes to be able to beat a boxer. So, yeah. So this guy Dante's boxing, he's been undermining the Mexico versus Puerto Rico rivalry, and this is what he said about This is what he said about the Subriel Matias Isaac Pitbull Cruz fight. That it reminds him of. He didn't even reference the Puerto Rico versus Mexico rivalry. I think he's in denial that we sell more than African American fighters, and it's been proven with Oscar De La Hoya when Mayweather fought him. It's been proven. Like Ryan Garcia, like Tank Davis had to fight Ryan Garcia to get more of a fan base. Devin Haney's doing the same thing. So you can't deny that the Latinos sell more than the African Americans, and not taking away nothing from the African American fighters when they're very talented. But I just think that Dante's boxing has been very biased, and he tries to undermine the Mexico Puerto Rico rivalry as the biggest rivalry. He says African American and the Mexican boxers is the biggest rivalry. I disagree. He's in denial. This is what he said.
The next co-promotional fight is Canelo Alvarez versus Jaime Munguia. It would be a shame if this fight never took place between Matias and Cruz, because this is a modern-day Diego Corrales versus Jose Luis Castillo. Only difference is Cruz has a much better defense than Castillo did. Now, Matias, he used to be with PBC, but when it came to striking a new deal,
Look, he references that boxing fight between Subriel Matias and Pitbull Cruz as a fight that reminds him of the Castillo versus Diego Corrales fight, which both fighters were Mexican, where Diego Corrales was half Mexican, half African American. He totally disregarded the fact that Subriel Matias is 100% Puerto Rican, 100% Puerto Rican. He's a dark-skinned Puerto Rican, which, remember, the African slave trade was bigger in Latin America than the United States. And we don't refer to a color. In our culture, we don't refer to a color as our race, because that's just the skin color. But we refer to our culture as who we are, because it's bigger. The African slave trade is different in the United States than it was in Latin America. We were able to get land. The African slaves were able to get land. My grandfather is a black Puerto Rican, so we all have African blood in us. Latinos, especially Puerto Ricans, Dominicans, and Cubans. But we don't call ourselves black, even though we could say our skin is black if we're dark. But we don't refer to just a skin color, because we're more than our skin color. So we have a culture. So basically, he totally undermined the Mexico versus Puerto Rico rivalry. Didn't even say that the Subriel Matias fight versus Isaac Pitbull Cruz reminded him of Fernando Vargas versus Felix Trinidad, Felix Trinidad versus Uruguay Campos, Hector Camacho versus Chavez. Well, they both don't have those styles. They don't have those styles. Macho Camacho's a boxer. Like Felix Trinidad, like is a puncher, right? So you can't really compare a fight with like Felix Trinidad and like Camacho and Chavez, like a fight between Subriel Matias versus Isaac Pitbull Cruz, because they both are punchers and their style is like designed to be a brutal war that people are going to be like satisfied with that kind of fight. But yeah, you see, he undermines that. He undermines that Subriel Matias is 100% Puerto Rican, and he's fighting Pitbull Cruz, who's 100% Mexican, and that's the kind of fight that should remind him of a Uruguay Campos versus Felix Trinidad, or it should remind him of a Wilfredo Gomez versus the fighter with Sanchez, that kind of fight. Salvador Sanchez versus Gomez. That should remind him of that kind of fight, because both fighters from those countries, Mexico and Puerto Rico, and they both have a fan-friendly style that people want to watch. But I think he's biased. He's biased, and he shouldn't be like that. He should be fair. So when it comes to the 140-pound weight class, I think Subriel Matias, Devin Haney, Teofimo Lopez, and now we have Pitbull Cruz. Now it makes it for an interesting fight between Pitbull Cruz and Subriel Matias. They should fight each other first. I think right now on paper, Devin Haney is the best fighter at 140, and Teofimo Lopez on paper, he cheated because he fought Josh Taylor after he was inactive for like 32 months, and that's not the best Taylor. He was already washed up. So I feel like he cheated. He went to 140 without really fighting, being consistent. He's not consistent. He's been active too, Teofimo Lopez. But I feel like the best fight to make is Isaac Pitbull Cruz and Subriel Matias. The biggest Puerto Rico versus Mexico rivalry, and that fight will make them a bigger household name, and they'll be able to make more money because that more fans cater to those Mexico versus Puerto Rico rivalry. But I feel like the best fighter really is unofficially Subriel Matias. He just needs to prove it in the ring. But I feel like all these other fighters, they like Teofimo Lopez, like they're not the best because they haven't fought a fighter that's consistently fighting and at his best yet. Already when he fought Josh Taylor, Teofimo Lopez, he was Josh Taylor was already washed up. He wasn't consistent. He was 32 months inactive, and I feel like Devin Haney picked the easiest fight that he could make with with Devin Haney. Devin Haney picked the easiest fight to make with Regis Progress. Like Regis Progress, he was not at his best. He's already like flat-footed, old, and out of his prime. He didn't even look good in his previous fight with Zorrilla in Puerto Rico. I think he lost that fight. So I feel now the best fight to make is Subriel Matias versus Isaac Pitbull Cruz, and I think Subriel Matias can beat Isaac Pitbull Cruz because he throws a lot of combinations, and he has a better defense than Pitbull Cruz. Pitbull Cruz throws a lot of wide shots, and Pitbull Cruz has a heart of a lion, and so does Subriel Matias. But I feel like Subriel Matias is more athletic. He throws I'm almost done. He throws a lot of more combinations. He has better defense. He's more athletic, Subriel Matias, than Isaac Pitbull Cruz. So I feel like that fight makes more sense, to make. And then he should fight Devin Haney or Teofimo Lopez. And the Devin Haney said he's willing to fight Subriel Matias. He said that he's gonna do what most people can't do, like because he's usually the one that fights the people that nobody else wants to fight. Well, let's see if what he's saying is true. He has to prove it because talk is cheap, and I feel like he has to really prove that he can handle or take a shot. Like when he fights Ryan Garcia, I think he's gonna win. But if he shows vulnerability, it's because he can't take a shot. If he gets hit, they're clean over here, and he can't take a shot. he shows vulnerability, I think that that's going to be a good example and evidence of why he won't be able to handle Subriel Matias. But Subriel Matias does have skills. He's very underrated, but he's the boogeyman. He is the boogeyman, not Devin Haney. Devin Haney is not a boogeyman. Nobody's scared to fight him. Everybody's trying to make the big money fights, but the fights that should be made are not being made. It's all about whatever the mainstream wants to support, but the fans are gonna win at the end. And I feel like the Subriel Matias is gonna gain his status once he fights Pitbull Cruz. He's gonna gain the status that he needs, or once he defends his belt in Puerto Rico and fights one more time in New York, I think he's gonna be a household name because Puerto Ricans are easier to market and Mexicans are easier to market because they're very fan friendly for the consumer, and most of the consumers are Puerto Rican, Mexican, and Latino. They support their fighters and they support pay-per-view buys, and they're more loyal when it comes to like supporting a fighter. So let me know what you think. You think the Subriel Matias versus Isaac Cruz fight should be made next? And who do you think wins in that fight? I picked Subriel Matias to knock him out in the 6th round or the 5th round. And I think that Subriel Matias is unofficially the best fighter at 140. But that remains to be seen when he fights Devin Haney. So we'll see what happens. Subscribe to my channel and check out my other videos. That I have a lot of other content that's interesting that a lot of people have been going back and forth. And a lot of content creators. I appreciate. I'm not clout chasing. I'm telling the truth. When you're telling the truth, you're not clout chasing. I just call it how it is. If I don't agree with a content creator, I'm gonna call it out. God bless. One love. Tony also knows boxing. Tune into my channel. Subscribe.